He always came around 7. Not for the coffee, he didn't even like the place that much, but for the quiet. That evening, the rain hadn't started yet, but the clouds were heavy enough to make everything look like it was waiting. He sat by the window, hands around a paper cup that had gone lukewarm 15 minutes ago. The street outside was all headlights and half conversations. He didn't notice her come in until the bell above the door rang twice, soft, hesitant. She shook off her umbrella, looked around, and then smiled when she saw him. "Still pretending to like that?" she said, nodding toward his coffee. He smiled back. "Still pretending it helps me focus." Her laugh was low, tired, but genuine. She placed her bag down and sat across from him, as if that's how it always was, no asking, no checking. Just familiarity that had crept up over weeks of shared silence. He noticed the small things first, the way she wiped the rim of her cup before drinking, the faint indentation where her wedding ring used to be, the way her hair curled slightly at her neck when it got humid. He never mentioned any of it. "You look tired," she said. "I'm fine," he lied. She didn't believe him, but she didn't press. Instead, she reached for the sugar, poured one packet, stirred once, twice, stopped halfway. He caught her staring out the window, watching a couple run under the awning across the street. "I used to like nights like this," she said quietly. "Before I started counting how late someone might be working." He didn't know what to say. The silence between them wasn't awkward, it just felt full. Like both were standing at the edge of saying something they shouldn't. He looked down, tracing the rim of his cup with a thumb. "Maybe it's not about who's late," he murmured. "Maybe it's about who's still waiting." She looked at him then, really looked. Not like someone searching for meaning, but like someone surprised by being understood. Her eyes softened, but only for a second. "You shouldn't say things like that," she said. "I didn't mean, I know." She smiled, just barely, and took a sip of her coffee. The steam rose between them, thin and slow, almost like it was trying to stay. He wanted to ask her something, anything that would keep her sitting there a little longer, but the words got stuck behind the small, polite smile he'd learned to use when things mattered too much. When her phone buzzed, she checked it quickly, face unreadable. Then she slid it back into her bag. "Duty calls?" he asked. "Something like that." She stood up, adjusted her coat, and hesitated. He noticed her hand brush against her phone again, not to check it, just to hold it. "Maybe I'll see you next week," she said. He nodded. "Same time?" "Maybe." She left with that same quiet grace, footsteps soft, the doorbell chiming once, the air shifting. He sat there, eyes on the reflection in the window, his own face beside hers as she disappeared into the street. Then his phone lit up on the table. A message from an unknown number. "You shouldn't be here tonight." He stared at it for a long moment, thumb hovering over the screen. Outside, the first drops of rain began to fall. And for the first time in weeks, he didn't know whether to leave, or wait. It was 3 days before he saw her again. Same cafe. Same table. Different weather. The rain had turned to sunlight, sharp and unkind, the kind that showed dust on every surface. He'd come earlier than usual, he didn't plan to, it just happened. When she arrived, she looked surprised to see him. "You're early," she said, setting her bag down. "Couldn't sleep," he admitted. She smiled faintly. "That's usually my line." For a while, they didn't talk much. The air smelled like burnt espresso. A song hummed low from the speaker, one he didn't know but wanted to remember. He watched her unwrap a tea bag carefully, the kind of slow, deliberate motion of someone trying to keep their hands busy. Her wedding ring wasn't there again. It hadn't been for weeks. But he'd noticed a thin tan line where it once Saturday. "Do you ever regret something before it even happens?" he asked suddenly. She looked up, eyes narrowing slightly, not in judgment, but curiosity. "That's a strange way to put it." Yeah, he said. Guess I've been thinking too much. About what? He hesitated. About how we keep meeting here. Like it's an accident that doesn't want to stop being one. Her gaze lingered on him. Then she exhaled. You remind me of my son's friend, she said softly. He used to sit like that, shoulders tense, like he was trying to hold the world together by not moving. He looked away, unsure what to do with that. The spoon in her cup tapped twice, a small, rhythmic sound that somehow felt louder than it should. Was he close to you? He asked. She nodded. He stopped visiting after the divorce. People pick sides, even when they don't mean to. He wanted to say something comforting, but the words came out awkward. I'm sorry. That must have been, she interrupted gently. Don't apologize for something you didn't break. The quiet that followed wasn't empty. It felt like both of them were sitting inside something fragile, not ready to touch it, but aware it was there. He leaned back, watching a loose strand of her hair fall forward as she reached for her tea. His fingers twitched, a small, almost invisible impulse to tuck it behind her ear. He didn't. I don't even know your favorite color, he said, trying to change the subject. Does it matter? She asked. Maybe not. But I keep noticing how you wear gray. Every time. She smiled, eyes down. Gray's safe. Safe can be lonely. That made her laugh, quiet and unsteady. You're too young to sound like that. Maybe. Or maybe I've been waiting too long for something I can't name. Their eyes met, not in a sudden, cinematic way, but in a slow recognition that neither wanted to break. The sunlight shifted across the table, warm on her hand. He didn't think. He just reached over and turned her teacup so the handle faced her. A small, ordinary gesture, almost meaningless. But she looked at him like it meant everything. Later, when he thought back on it, he couldn't explain why that moment stayed with him. Maybe because, for the first time, it felt like someone finally saw him. The next week, he didn't plan to see her. He told himself that more than once, said it out loud, even. But by Thursday, he was there again, same table, same time. Except she wasn't. The absence felt loud. He kept glancing toward the door, checking his phone, pretending to scroll. The clock above the counter ticked slow enough to feel personal. When she finally arrived, she looked different. Hair tied up. No lipstick. Eyes tired, but sharper somehow. You're early again, she said. He smiled, trying to make it sound easy. Guess I've got a habit now. She didn't sit right away. Just stood there, holding her cup, scanning the cafe as if someone might be watching. Then, quietly, we shouldn't do this so often. The words weren't harsh, but they landed heavy. He looked down. I know. You don't. She finally Saturday, you're young. You think it's just coffee. But people notice. He frowned slightly. People. Her hand flexed against her cup, not fidgeting, just grounding herself. A friend of my husband came by last time. He asked about you. His chest tightened. What did you say? That you were a student I used to help with something. He almost laughed, but it came out small. Guess that makes me your project now. Don't joke, she said softly. This isn't, she stopped herself. He nodded. Yeah. I know. But he didn't know what he was agreeing to. Only that her voice got quieter when she said it, like she was protecting something. The silence stretched between them, full of things neither could take back. Then she spoke again, barely above a whisper. I used to wait for him. Every night. Dinner on the table, light in the hallway, phone close. Some nights I'd just fall asleep on the couch. He'd wake me with noise, not touch. He wanted to reach for her then, not to hold, but to remind her she wasn't invisible. His hand moved an inch across the table, stopped halfway. Her eyes followed the motion. She didn't pull back. Didn't move closer, either. "You shouldn't look at me like that," she said. "Like what?" "Like you're about to say something you'll regret." He didn't answer. He couldn't. For a moment, neither of them breathed. The cafe door opened, laughter spilled in, a gust of cold air, the smell of rain. A couple walked past them, talking too loud. She turned away, pretending to stir her drink again. The sound faded. They were alone again. She reached for her phone, then set it down, screen face down. "You remind me what it felt like to be seen. I don't know if that's good or bad." He swallowed. "It's real." She looked up, eyes soft, mouth parting like a reply almost escaped. For a heartbeat, the world shrank to the space between them, her hand resting near his pulse too loud. And then her phone lit up. A name he didn't recognize. She stared at it, then at him. "I have to go," she whispered. He nodded, but neither moved. Her fingers brushed the back of his hand as she stood. A half-touch, warm, fleeting, accidental only in appearance. By the time she left, the air still carried that touch. He sat there, motionless, unsure if he'd just imagined it, or crossed the line without meaning to. They met outside that time. No cafe, no walls between them, just the muted light of late afternoon and the soft hum of traffic a block away. She'd texted first. "Walk?" He said yes before thinking. They didn't say much at first. Their steps found an easy rhythm on the cracked sidewalk, the kind of silence that used to feel comfortable. But today it was heavier. She had her hands buried in her coat pockets. He could hear the faint rustle of paper, a receipt maybe, shifting with her movement. "Rough day?" he asked. She smiled without looking at him. "Every day's rough when you live in half-truths." He slowed his pace. "That about me? Maybe about both of us." They reached a small park, nearly empty except for a man tossing breadcrumbs to pigeons. The benches were damp from the morning rain, but she sat anyway. He joined her, close enough to feel the warmth radiating off her coat. "I saw him today," she said after a while. "At lunch." He looked, happy. Lighter, somehow. He didn't ask who. He didn't have to. "Did you talk?" She shook her head. "No point. We're polite strangers now. Familiar ghosts." He wanted to reach for her hand, but something in her voice held him still. "You ever feel like you're just filling in for someone else's silence?" she said quietly. He frowned. "I don't want to fill in. He stopped. Words felt too big for what he meant. She turned to him then, really turned, eyes tired, guarded, but open in a way that made his chest ache. "You shouldn't care this much," she said. He laughed once under his breath. "Too late for that." She smiled faintly, but it didn't reach her eyes. "You remind me how I used to feel before everything got small. Maybe it doesn't have to stay that way." "Don't say that." "Why not?" "Because you'll start believing it. And so will I." The wind carried the sound of children from somewhere far away, laughter, a bouncing ball, the scrape of sneakers on pavement. It felt like another life. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, staring at the ground. "I think about you too much," he said, voice barely above a whisper. Her breath caught, so small he might have imagined it. "Don't," she said, softer now. "Don't do that to yourself. I'm not sure I can stop." The words hung there, suspended in the space between confession and consequence. She reached out then, fingertips brushing the sleeve of his jacket, not quite a touch, but close enough for him to feel it echo. Her eyes glistened, not from tears, but restraint. "You don't understand what this could ruin." He turned toward her. "Then tell me to go." She opened her mouth, then closed it. The pigeons scattered suddenly, wings breaking the quiet as if the world had chosen for them. When she finally spoke, her voice trembled just slightly. "What if I don't want you to?" And that's where they stayed, too close, too aware, the question trembling in the air between them, waiting for someone brave enough to answer it. They met outside that time. No cafe, no walls between them, just the muted light of late afternoon and the soft hum of traffic a block away. She'd texted first. "Walk?" He said yes before thinking. They didn't say much at first. Their steps found an easy rhythm on the cracked sidewalk, the kind of silence that used to feel comfortable. But today it was heavier. She had her hands buried in her coat pockets. He could hear the faint rustle of paper, a receipt maybe, shifting with her movement. "Rough day?" he asked. She smiled without looking at him. "Every day's rough when you live in half-truths." He slowed his pace. "That about me? Maybe about both of us." They reached a small park, nearly empty except for a man tossing breadcrumbs to pigeons. The benches were damp from the morning rain, but she sat anyway. He joined her, close enough to feel the warmth radiating off her coat. "I saw him today," she said after a while. "At lunch." He looked happy. Lighter, somehow. He didn't ask who. He didn't have to. "Did you talk?" She shook her head. "No point. We're polite strangers now. Familiar ghosts." He wanted to reach for her hand, but something in her voice held him still. "You ever feel like you're just filling in for someone else's silence?" she said quietly. He frowned. "I don't want to fill in. He stopped. Words felt too big for what he meant. She turned to him then, really turned, eyes tired, guarded, but open in a way that made his chest ache. "You shouldn't care this much," she said. He laughed once under his breath. "Too late for that." She smiled faintly, but it didn't reach her eyes. "You remind me how I used to feel before everything got small. Maybe it doesn't have to stay that way." "Don't say that." "Why not?" "Because you'll start believing it. And so will I." The wind carried the sound of children from somewhere far away, laughter, a bouncing ball, the scrape of sneakers on pavement. It felt like another life. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, staring at the ground. "I think about you too much," he said, voice barely above a whisper. Her breath caught, so small he might have imagined it. "Don't," she said, softer now. "Don't do that to yourself. I'm not sure I can stop." The words hung there, suspended in the space between confession and consequence. She reached out then, fingertips brushing the sleeve of his jacket, not quite a touch, but close enough for him to feel it echo. Her eyes glistened, not from tears, but restraint. "You don't understand what this could ruin." He turned toward her. "Then tell me to go." She opened her mouth, then closed it. The pigeons scattered suddenly, wings breaking the quiet as if the world had chosen for them. When she finally spoke, her voice trembled just slightly. "What if I don't want you to?" And that's where they stayed, too close, too aware, the question trembling in the air between them, waiting for someone brave enough to answer it. It had been almost a month. The city had moved on without him, same buses, same lights, same people ordering the same drinks. He hadn't gone back to the cafe since that night. But he still carried her note in his wallet, folded so many times the edges had begun to fray. He told himself it was closure. That she'd made her choice. And yet, every time his phone buzzed, something inside him still waited. Then one evening, he saw her. It wasn't planned. He'd stopped at a small grocery store near the park, reaching for a carton of milk, and there she was, across the aisle, holding a loaf of bread like she didn't know what to do with it. For a moment, neither spoke. Just that strange, fragile recognition of two people who had once almost been something. "Hey," he said finally. She smiled, small, tentative. You look well. So do you. A lie. She looked thinner. Tired, but softer somehow. They ended up outside, sitting on the curb with their groceries between them. Dusk had settled, painting everything in that in-between light where faces look almost familiar again. I thought you moved, she said. I thought you didn't want me to find you. I didn't, she admitted. But here we are. They both laughed quietly, the kind of laugh that didn't belong to happiness, but to relief. He looked down at his hands. I kept thinking about what you wrote. She tilted her head. About mercy? Yeah. I think you were right. Her eyes softened. And still you kept waiting. He nodded. I didn't know what else to do. They sat in silence for a long time, not uncomfortable, just final. The world around them faded into distant footsteps, a barking dog, a car door slamming somewhere down the street. I left him, she said suddenly. He looked up. When? 2 weeks ago. Not because of you. I didn't think it was. Good. She smiled faintly. Because it wasn't about anyone else. I just got tired of being quiet in my own life. He didn't say anything. Didn't trust his voice to stay even. After a pause, she added, I kept wanting to call you. But I was afraid it would start everything up again. And now? I don't know. The honesty in her tone hurt more than any goodbye could have. She turned toward him, studying his face the way people study a photograph they're not sure they should keep. I can't promise you anything, she said softly. I'm not asking you to. She nodded, almost smiling. Then she reached out, slow, hesitant, and brushed a bit of dust from his sleeve. A tiny, unremarkable gesture. But it felt like the most human thing in the world. He met her eyes. So what now? She looked down at her hands, then back at him. Maybe we just let the world be quiet for a while. He breathed out, something loosening inside his chest. Okay, he said. Just that. No promises. No future plans. Just an understanding, fragile, present, and real. The streetlights flickered on above them, casting a soft gold over two people who had finally said enough without needing to say everything. And for the first time, silence didn't feel like mercy. It felt like peace. A year passed quietly. Not all at once, just a steady drift of days that folded into each other. Seasons turned, headlines changed, the cafe renovated its windows, and the street trees bloomed again like nothing had ever happened. He didn't think about her every day anymore. Just in moments, the way morning light fell across his kitchen counter, the way the kettle clicked off a beat too soon, or when someone ordered black coffee and said they didn't take sugar. He'd started teaching again, part-time. Something about routine steadied him. The rhythm of showing up, listening, leaving. Ordinary life had become its own kind of healing. Then, one morning, around 8:47 a.m., he saw her again. She was sitting on their bench, the one by the park, reading, hair shorter now, wearing that same gray coat that somehow still suited her better than color ever could. He stopped a few feet away, unsure if she'd seen him. But then she looked up, and smiled. Not the startled kind, or the polite one. Just a small, knowing smile that carried a year's worth of unsent words. Coffee, he said. Tea, she replied. Still one sugar. They walked together to the corner cafe, not the same one as before, but close enough to feel familiar. The barista didn't know their history, and that anonymity felt like a kind of grace. They talked about small things first. The weather. Work. How she was helping her daughter move into a new apartment. He told her about his students, how one of them kept turning in essays that read like love letters to no one. When their drinks came, she reached for the sugar. One packet, stir twice, stop halfway, still the same. He noticed, and she caught him noticing. Some habits don't change, she said. Some shouldn't, he answered. They sat in that gentle, wordless understanding, not waiting for anything, not holding back either. The air between them felt steady, not charged. I kept thinking we'd run into each other again, she said quietly. Guess we did. Guess so. She smiled at that, and for a moment, everything felt like it had already found its right place. No promises. No apologies. Just two people who had walked through the noise and found something quieter on the other side. When they left, he walked her to the park gate. She paused before stepping away. I'm glad we didn't say goodbye last time, she said. He nodded. Maybe we just needed time to mean it differently. She reached up then, not to touch his face, not to hold his hand, just to straighten the collar of his coat. A small, ordinary thing. But between them, it said everything. See you around, he asked. She smiled. You already do. She walked away slowly, and he let her, but this time, without ache. Just quiet gratitude. He sat on the bench after she left, still warm from the sun. His phone buzzed once, a message from a friend. He ignored it for a while, just watching the street move, the world turn. There was peace in not needing more. And as he looked at the empty space beside him, he smiled, the kind that comes when you finally understand that some stories don't need endings, just gentle pauses that feel like home. Did this story stay with you? What kind of quiet, real love stories do you want to hear next? Tell me in the comments, your words might inspire the next one.